Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, really glad you're here for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We don't really have a good martini today, but we do have some good news we can mention right off the bat, and that is that, as we suspected a few weeks ago, the president is removing David Chipman as his nominee for heading up the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or at least that is now expected. The guy's basically a massive anti-gun activist, so he was not right for that position, and we kind of saw the handwriting on the wall for that before the recess, but looks like it's going to be official very, very soon. But, okay, let's get into the stuff that's not good. That starts with the Biden administration's new laser focus on defeating the virus. And basically, as Jim has pointed out, it's pretty much the same as it was before, except he's gotten even tougher on federal employees. Politico says President Joe Biden on Thursday will require all federal workers to get vaccinated against COVID-19 with no option for being regularly tested as an alternative, according to a person familiar with the plan. The executive order represents a sharp escalation from Biden's earlier encouragement that federal employees seek vaccination or be subject to a range of restrictions, and comes as the administration readies a redoubling of efforts to rein in the virus. It also is going to apply to contractors. There's also going to be much greater push for testing in schools and so forth. And Jim, basically it's the same plan. I'm kind of frustrated by the number of Americans who love vaccine mandates, but what do you make of Biden's latest push here?
Well, Greg, the first frustration is that the much touted new strategy that they promised earlier this week is the same old strategy, but louder. You just say it at a louder volume, people will apparently listen. The other thing is that I this is I'm trying to think of the appropriate metaphor of, I think Dennis Miller used to use the joke, all preparation and no H, a ludicrous amount of fanfare for something that ends up being not much of anything at all, because we're in a country where 208 million Americans have at least one dose. And remember, there are about 50 million Americans who are age 11 and younger who can't. So actually, in terms of it, that adds out to about 75%, a little bit more of all American adults are vaccinated, or at least have one shot. And presumably a bunch of the folks who have gotten that first shot will get around to getting their second shot eventually. The federal workforce is what, 2 million people total? I have a very hard time believing that unvaccinated federal workers are really at the root of this problem, and that if we could just get them vaccinated, we'll make this really huge step. It seems, if there's a reason to believe that the percentage of federal workers vaccinated is different from the percentage of U.S. adults that are vaccinated, I'd love to see that. My guess is that somewhere around 75% of federal workers are vaccinated. So, okay, you're going to throw a few more into the fully vaccinated pile, but I just don't see this as being that much of a dramatic difference. And yeah, it sounds like there's at least some. I think it was one survey back in July that said about 14% of people, 14% of U.S. adults are, I am never getting this vaccine, no matter what. I don't care if I lose my job. I don't care. You're never putting that vaccine into me. So a good question is, like, what do we as a country want to do with those people? And a lot of people seem very comfortable saying, well, we've got to figure out some way to force them to take this vaccine. I'm perfectly comfortable coexisting with the people who utterly refuse to take this vaccine. I think it's bad. I wish they would. I'll encourage them. I have no objection to the prizes, the lotteries, all that different kind of stuff. There's some really intriguing stuff indicating that if you have gotten COVID early on in this pandemic, and then you get the vaccine on top of that, that you have, for lack of a better term, super immunity, that your immune system is really prepared for another recurrence of the kind that you got. But putting the vaccine on top of that makes you ready for all kinds of the variants, at least the variants we have seen so far. So that sounds really good. Wouldn't you really like to have super immunity? So that would be my message to the remaining folks who are unvaccinated. If you don't want it, fine. I'm not going to make you do it. I don't have the ability to make you do it. And I don't think the federal government has the ability to make you do it. But if you're going to, the aspect I'd love to see Biden talk about today, and I'm not expecting him to go into, I was like, because of the contagiousness of the Delta variant, there's a really good chance you're going to run into it at some point. It's like the common cold. It's just going to float around everywhere. So here's the question. If you're almost destined to run into it at some point, Don't you want your body to be at maximum preparation? Now, are there better treatments out there? Monoclonal antibodies, and yes, that's we're doing a better job of keeping the people alive who catch COVID-19. And as always, young and healthy people who catch COVID-19, their odds of coming through this are hunky-dory. But you notice that the number of people who are hospitalized and who are dying among the elderly have dropped, not just precipitously, dramatically since the vaccination effort rolled out amongst the elderly, where I think we're at, now beyond 92% of American senior citizens have been vaccinated. That's a really good thing. My pitch to everybody else who's unvaccinated would be that. I don't think we're going to get you fired if you don't take the vaccine. I don't think that's really going to be the right approach. It's clearly not a different approach. It clearly is not a new strategy. And I don't think this will see dramatically different results from what we've seen so far, Greg.
What we will hear from Joe Biden, of course, is browbeating business owners to force their employees to get it. So therefore, the customers will be protected and so forth. But as you point out, it's really an issue of should you get it versus you have to get it. That is the big divide here. I think most people would encourage the vaccine. It's just a matter of whether you have to. And so for Biden to keep pushing down this road and to, again, push business owners into that direction is a very, very different story. Last thing on this issue, you mentioned super immunity, but what about the natural immunity? We've seen studies lately that suggest it might last a bit longer than the vaccines, and it's certainly as strong. You might want the super immunity, but should you have to in these situations if you've got the natural immunity? I think there's going to be some fights here. In fact, I think there was a George Mason University professor that just won his lawsuit against the school because he already had COVID and believes his natural immunity can stand up to it.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, from the very beginning of this, we've had this dynamic of health experts and public health officials not giving the answer of what they really think, not giving the answer that the data necessarily always supports, but being much more of this is the answer that I think will get the people to make the right decisions. And kind of the suggestion that they're not real. They're almost like playing a psychology game, right? What does it take to get somebody to get the general public to make the right decisions there? If it turned out that having the virus and then that you have the virus, your body fights off it, you have the antibodies. If that was actually better than vaccines, then all of a sudden everyone who should go out and get a vaccine, well, that's not necessarily true. Again, I think vaccines have the chances of you having a bad reaction are exceptionally small. If you have any questions, talk to your doctor. But maybe it really isn't such a huge priority to get people vaccinated if they've had it before and if their body still has the antibodies. And now we've had different studies that have debated how much your antibodies die off. We're a little bit concerns about, if you had one type, are your body going to be as prepared for the next variant or something like that? I'm sure the attitude of most public health experts is, let's just get as many people vaccinated as possible. And again, we've done not that bad. 75% of adults is really not that bad. And we've only had the ones available for the teenagers for the past couple of months. So, we'll see how this shakes out. But it just kind of feels like there's been this almost a sales pitch, right? This idea that they're giving you the message that they think will most likely to alter your behavior in the direction they want, instead of telling you the truth, even if some of the information that's true turns out to be inconvenient.
And that's why their reputation is totally in the crapper, from whether you should wear masks to where the virus came from to this. It's not telling you the truth. It's telling you what they think is going to be most convincing to you. And that's why they're in a world of hurt in these situations. And one of the things they won't admit, of course, is that while they're making it sound like the entire list of holdouts is in MAGA country, a lot of it's in the inner city, too. You got a lot of minorities who don't trust the system either. And so the narrative and the facts are not lining up in some of these cases. But we will see where it goes from here and what else Biden throws into his presentation later this afternoon. In the meantime, get your multivitamins going. That always helps as well. But we deserve to know what we're putting into our bodies and why, especially when it comes to something we take every day. And Ritual's clean, vegan-friendly multivitamin is formulated with high-quality nutrients in bioavailable forms your body can actually use. You're not going to find any sugars, GMOs, major allergens, synthetic fillers, artificial colors, none of that. In addition to all the natural things, you'll also have the fresh taste and the delayed release capsule design that makes taking your vitamins really easy. I've been using Ritual multivitamins for a long time. Very easy to take. Love the fact that they've got ingredients in there that'll strengthen your immune system, like the zinc and the vitamin C and the vitamin D. Definitely a great supplement to what you're already doing.
Ritual is the multivitamin reimagined. A multivitamin should contain key nutrients in forms that your body can actually use to help fill gaps in your diet, and no shady extras. Ritual's delayed release capsule design delivers high quality nutrients, including vitamin D3, in just 2 daily pills. And Ritual's made traceable, which means you'll always know what nutrients you're taking and where they come from, thanks to Ritual's one-of-a-kind visible supply chain.
So get your key nutrients without the BS. Ritual is offering 3 Martini Lunch listeners 10% off during your first 3 months. Visit ritual.com/martini to start your ritual today. Again, ritual.com/martini. All right, Jim, let's move on to our second martini. I guess the first one was kind of crazy since nothing's really changing all that much. This one's definitely bad. It's the naivete of the Biden national security and foreign policy teams. Because, man, everything they said the Taliban would do, now Lloyd Austin and Tony Blinken are showing up like the folks who were shocked that there was gambling going on at Rick's in Casablanca. It's just, I can't believe the Taliban wouldn't follow up on its word on this stuff. 2 different ways that this is happening here, actually 3. But first of all, this is courtesy of ABC News. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin worried that the Taliban might allow al-Qaeda to build roots in Afghanistan again. It's shocking to think that that might actually happen, of course. He says the whole community is kind of watching to see what happens and whether or not al-Qaeda has the ability to regenerate in Afghanistan. The nature of al-Qaeda and the Islamic State is they will always attempt to find space to grow and regenerate, whether it's there, whether it's in Somalia, or whether it's in any other ungoverned space. I think that's the nature of the organization. True. Next quote, we put the Taliban on notice that we expect them to not allow that to happen, said Austin, referring to the possibility of al-Qaeda using Afghanistan as a staging base in the future. He says that they can keep an eye on terrorist activities in Afghanistan by using surveillance and strike aircraft based elsewhere, including the Persian Gulf. However, he has acknowledged that it will be more difficult without U.S. troops and intelligence teams based in Afghanistan. You think? As for Secretary of State Antony Blinken, after on Tuesday saying there's no hint of a hostage situation in Mazar-e-Sharif, he is now admitting, without using the word hostage, that the Taliban won't let the planes leave there. As you point out in the Jolt today, Jim, a plane did leave from Kabul today, so a few more Americans got out, as well as some other people. So we'll take good news anywhere we can get it there. But the other news, Jim, is that the international community is very disappointed in the Taliban for the constitution of its new interim government. Jim, just listen to this blistering denunciation. Nah, I'm just kidding. He's using the most mealy-mouthed language possible.
With regard to the composition of this government or interim government, I noted the fact that it certainly does not meet the test of inclusivity, and it includes people who have very challenging track records.
People with very challenging track records. Jim, that's the best euphemism I've seen out of a Democratic administration since terrorist attacks were referred to as man-made disasters during the Obama years.
Greg, there's a real history to this because I can remember going back to Clinton's second term, Madeleine Albright, who really didn't like at some point an interviewer using the term rogue states. This was describing Iran, North Korea, Saddam Hussein's Iraq. And she preferred the term, we prefer the term states of concern. Now, I think it was, I don't know if it was Dennis Miller. Somebody used to joke that once you go to the State Department, there's a surgical procedure in which they remove your spine so that you can continue to do your job and be this, a blob-like jellyfish that never stands up for anything. First of all, listening to that audio, Greg, of all the possible options for Joe Biden's Secretary of State, Antony Blinken was seen as the one of the more hawkish ones. I think that was a misplaced optimism. Not only do I not see any hawkish or tough instincts out of him, I think it was Hugh Hewitt was doing an interview with Chris Wallace, and Chris Wallace has a new book out about the bin Laden raid, and Blinken appears a few times early on because he was a key aide, might have been the national security advisor to Joe Biden early in the first term of the Obama presidency. And then Blinken disappears from the book. And it was kind of interesting to see Chris Wallace agreeing with Hugh Hewitt that Blinken is really just what we can debate about whether he's up to the administrative part of the job. But in terms of the public communications, he's exactly like the colorless, pallid, I hate to say weak, but I don't think there's any other way to put it. Like this language, the delivery, I'm sure he thinks he's being like calm and reassuring, but in the end, he looks inert. There's no passion. And Americans being held by the Taliban and not being allowed to leave. Oh, by the way, first of all, we call that hostages. And then the second thing is just that, like, this should make you angry. This should make you passionate. This should get your blood pumping. And if it doesn't, get out of the job for someone who does. This administration claims that it cares, but we're not seeing it in the action. And I think you can argue we don't see it in the words. When they say, challenging individuals who are in this, well, one of them's the head of the Haqqani network. They're a terrorist group, right? So that's problem number one. And then this Haqqani network is reportedly one of the ones who has one of the Americans who was abducted in January 2020. So even separate from the Americans who could not get out before the Taliban came to power, this is somebody who has an American hostage. This is a hell of a lot more than challenging. This is a flat out malevolent and evil group that is coming to power. And the idea of, we're going to hold them and all that stuff. The entire Morning Jolt is about this nonsensical claim from Jen Psaki saying that, we've got access to global financial markets, the global community. That's big. No, it's not. These guys burn the faces of schoolgirls with acid. Do you think they care what the international community thinks? Do you think they care about access to international markets? Look at who you are dealing with. And this is in some ways international diplomacy 101, this concept of mirror imaging, this idea that you go into dealings with another country and you assume that things that are important to you must be important to them, when in fact that may or may not be the case at all. In the case of the Taliban, I don't see any evidence that they care that much about international recognition or access to international trade or any of that kind of stuff. And by the way, even if they did, it certainly looks like China and Russia have a much higher tolerance for all of the abominable actions of the Taliban. But even if they did, do these guys look like they're putting terrorists in their government? They're threatening genocide against particular interest groups. They're whipping women in the streets. Does this look like a group that cares about international opinion? And if they don't care about international opinion, stop trying to use international opinion as a pressure point against them. You have no leverage. The only language the Taliban understands is force. And our president just made sure we have no more ability to generate any force against them. We have walked ourselves into a box canyon, and there are exceptionally few good options left. Greg, I'm just going to observe that, I believe that on September 11th, the Taliban is supposed to have the big swearing-in ceremony for their government, which means they're going to have all the leaders of their government in one place at one time. I don't want to who will rid me of this troublesome piece. It'd be a shame if we had a drone accident or something. We accidentally fired and blew up the whole building and killed all of them in one fell swoop. Boy, wouldn't that be terrible?
Yeah, awful. Yeah. Hope nobody's
Bummer.
listening to that idea and putting together a plan to do something about it.
Look, Greg, neither you and I are calling for it. We're just saying that they're at the coordinates 4628.
Latitude and longitude, just in case you're interested in sending a card to congratulate them.
Yeah.
They also understand cash, unfortunately, so I'm just wondering if that's going to be the way we finally resolve what is essentially a hostage crisis over there now. But we'll see. We'll see. Wouldn't be the first time a Democratic administration sent lots of cash. All right, let's talk about ways to relax after a very stressful bad martini, and that is with the wonderful products from MyPillow. Look, there's nothing better than slipping into bed with soft, comfortable sheets at the end of a very long day, and MyPillow wants you to sleep better with their Giza Dream Sheets. But the products don't stop there. You've got the towels, you've got the pillows themselves, of course, and the great My Slippers.
Right now, for a limited time, you can receive 50% off of any Giza Dream Sheets with a price as low as $49.99. And you can get 50% off My Slippers. I don't mean My Slippers as in the ones I'm wearing right now, but I mean My Slippers from MyPillow. As for those Giza Dream Sheets, imagine sliding into the most comfortable sheets you will ever own, guaranteed. They're made from the world's best cotton, grown only in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. Its long staple cotton makes it ultra soft and breathable. These sheets are available in a variety of colors and sizes. They're machine washable. They have a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 1-year limited warranty.
Now, before you slip into those dream sheets, slip out of your My Slippers, which took 2 years to develop. They're designed to be worn indoors and outdoors all day long. The My Pillow foam and impact gel really does prevent fatigue. I can certainly attest to that. I usually like to walk around the house just in socks, but when it comes to the My Slippers, it's actually more comfortable than just walking around on your own feet. And it's also made with quality leather suede. Now, for a limited time, you can save 50% on all Giza Dream Sheets and the My Slippers. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the Radio Listeners Square, and use the promo code Martini at checkout. Or call 800-874-0104 and use the promo code there. You'll also find deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the MyPillow mattress topper, MyPillow towel sets, and so much more. Don't miss the sale of the year. That's MyPillow.com, promo code Martini, or call 800-874-0104. Sleep better with MyPillow.com. All right, Jim. We're bookending today's Three Martini Lunch with discussions of COVID policy. We talked about the vaccine mandates that Biden will be rolling out today, and by the time some of you hear the podcast, he will have already done it. On the other side is what Biden is doing in terms of travel restrictions, and as you have documented very well, Jim, it makes no sense. He has put very serious travel restrictions in place for much of Europe, including countries where the vaccination rate is very, very high compared to other countries. And then some other parts of the world where the vaccination rates aren't nearly as good. Yeah, come on in. So what's really going on here?
Yeah, so early on in the pandemic, the Trump administration enacts restrictions on people entering the country from China. Okay, that everybody kind of understood that. Everybody recognized that. That's where the virus originated, from the lab. Oh, I'm sorry, allegedly from the lab, maybe from the lab. And then, shortly thereafter, you saw steps that included Iran and other places where we saw, various variants coming and things like that. And whether or not, it may not be exactly what you can understand how this would, inconvenience a lot of people's lives, and people who have relatives in other countries want them to be able to visit. But you could say, okay, well, there's just too many coming from, the risk from China is too bad. The risk from Iran is so bad. And right towards the end of the Trump administration, the attitude was like, okay, well, Europe's not looking so bad. We're going to let them come in. But the Biden administration, 5 days after he's in office, he's like, no, we're keeping all these. We're doing the entire European Schengen area. I know that sounds like an evil ninja from the Shang-Chi movie, but Schengen area, basically it's most of continental Europe. It's not exactly everything in the EU, but it's all the European countries that come to mind. The travel restrictions also apply to the United Kingdom, also applies to the Republic of Ireland. Sorry, colleague Michael Brendan Doherty. It also applies to Brazil, where there'd been one of those variants that originated. South Africa, where one of the variants that originated, and India, which was it's like really being devastated and hit really hard. Now, the irony is that this is all this was announced back in January. Since then, a whole bunch of countries have ended up with much higher vaccination rates, and so you'd say okay that the risk from the United Kingdom now is very different than it was back in January for all these European countries. Whereas for these, meanwhile, these variants that we were really worried about from South Africa and from Brazil and from places like that, they've spread to a bunch of other parts of the world. So if you're trying to keep out, I know we're now called, the names of the viruses and variants are now sound like a whole bunch of, raging keggers of fraternities. But, back then it's like, oh, the Brazilian variant. We don't want people from there. Well, the Brazilian variant has now spread to a bunch of other countries. Oh, the South African variant. Well, the South African variant has now been. So we now are at a point where the Biden administration's policy on who has a harder time to get into the country, well, you'd say it's very tough to get in from, say, Iceland, because Iceland is part of the Schengen area. Now, never mind the fact that, 75% of the population is adults and 73% of the citizens are fully vaccinated, meaning that almost every adult in Iceland is fully vaccinated, and Iceland may well be the most vaccinated country in the entire world. And everything I'm saying for Iceland is true to a slightly lesser degree for Malta, Portugal, Spain, Denmark, Belgium, San Marino, France, Ireland. They all have really high vaccination rates. You don't have these same kind of restrictions for places like Yemen or South Sudan or Chad or Haiti or Turkmenistan or Cameroon, all of which are, if not at 0% vaccinated, they're like in the single digits. Very, very few people are vaccinated. Now, this is separate. Does the U.S. require everyone who's coming into the country to get a negative test or be vaccinated? Yes. But what the executive order did was you basically can't go in straight from, unless you're a diplomat or something like that. You can't fly in straight from Portugal, Spain, Ireland, or something like that. You have to spend 14 days in one of these other countries, and then you can fly in. So a lot of people either can't afford the time or can't afford the expense of staying in another country for 14 days, not being in that. And people have said, look, maybe this made sense in January or in the early days of this pandemic. It doesn't make nearly as much sense now. And it certainly doesn't make sense to have much tougher restrictions on people in highly vaccinated countries than you do in countries who have very poor vaccination rates. Nothing makes sense. It's President Mr. Magoo. He just doesn't see it, and he's just probably not going to take any questions about it today.
Come on, man. Give him a break. Just kidding. He deserves no breaks on any of these stories. Jim, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. We're always happy to have new listeners. Also, thank you so much for those 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Get us on those home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on Twitter. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Thursday, and please join us on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.
Hi, it's Dana Lash, host of The Dana Show. Every day, I'm here to keep you up to speed on the most important stories and info that you need to know in your very busy life. And if you're always on the go and you want to stay connected, just download our daily podcast and take it with you. It's a great way to get up to speed on what you need to know and what legacy media may not be telling you. Visit danaradio.com and click on the podcast link or subscribe at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.